I'm recording this video to just talk about online learning a little bit. I know a lot of people are moving their courses online in some places because of the pandemic that we are in right now. And I spent 6 years as principal of an online school. I was also, I've been involved with online learning, I think, since 2007. It's somewhere around there, 2007 or 2008. So, quite a few years. I am still an online teacher as an adjunct at a university. So I've spent a lot of time in this environment, and I just wanted to kind of pass along some of my knowledge to help people out there. A lot of the reason, like in my district, we don't have a learning management system or anything like that. Some of you do, but the pandemic is forcing us to move learning online so students understand. And I'll be honest with you, my perspective for online learning is sixth grade and higher. It is not for anything lower than that. So I am basically speaking to my middle school, but mostly my high school people. Elementary online education also works and has worked well in some places, but I don't know what it looks like. So I am not going to be able to speak intelligently about that, but you can probably take some of these principles and apply them to that. I think that this needs to be part of how we do things anyway, because when students go to a university, they are going to be in a learning management system, whether that's Blackboard or D2L or Canvas or even some of the older ones or weird ones like Sakai and that sort of thing, Schoology. So I definitely recommend that we start moving this way anyway. And it is pretty obvious that many districts were not prepared to handle what was coming at them during this pandemic. So, the philosophical underpinnings that I use for online learning don't differ much from the face to face classroom. And those two for me are constructivism and existentialism. Constructivism, because I feel like learning still needs to be social. That students are constructing knowledge in their own minds, in their own way. And I believe in a student centered form of education because a teacher in an online environment takes on quite a few different roles. And it's the same as face to face, but the roles are a little bit more clearly marked in an online learning environment. So the first role a teacher has is a designer. The second one is a curator. The third one is a tutor, and the fourth one is an evaluator. And so those are really important. The existentialism piece comes about because I feel like relationships still matter. I still feel like the teacher and student need to be authentic, true to themselves, and that there should be a relationship between the two, and that will improve your online learning. That's important because I feel like if you're not rooted in a philosophy, no matter what you do, then you are going to just kind of twist in the wind. So let's get down to the five elements of an online course. And they're no different, again, than what you would see in a face to face classroom, but they are reconstituted a little bit differently. So you have five different elements. You've got instructional materials, assignments, assessments, feedback, and discussions. So let's talk about each of those. Your instructional materials. Teachers deliver instruction all kinds of different ways. Everything in the regular classroom, from standing up in front of everybody and speaking, lecturing, and that sort of thing, to putting students in small groups, to showing videos. There are numerous ways that students deliver instruction. And honestly, in the past decade or two, we've been getting away from a lot of direct instruction. And that's fine, but we still have to have some direct instruction, and that's what we're going to talk about. The two ways that you deliver direct instruction online are videos and readings. So videos, those can be anything from YouTube, Khan Academy, wherever you find videos. I guarantee you, any concept that is taught K-12, if you go to YouTube and do a search, you're going to find thousands upon thousands of results for each concept. So those are out there. I don't think that's the best way to do it, though. You could inundate your students with tons of resources. You could curate the best resources. However, you have to remember that in a classroom setting where you're the teacher, if you're the one providing feedback, if you're the one who is grading things and giving it back, your expertise matters. And so you need to be providing some direct instruction yourself. Whether it's a video you shoot with your camera, whether it's a screen recording like this, some element of your face and your personality needs to come through that class. And I would try to keep my videos to 15 minutes or less. Hopefully I'll be able to keep this one to 15 minutes or less. The second are readings. Those are important. We do those in face-to-face classroom, and those don't change much. But I would urge you to do an active reading rather than a passive one. Don't just assign pages to read or PDFs to read. Give them some guided notes or questions or something that must be done with the material, or not simply just assign them to read it and expect it to be done. That doesn't happen in your face-to-face class either. So I would definitely make this an active experience online rather than a passive experience. And then when we talk about assignments, they need to be heuristic, which that's a word I didn't always know. I just learned it a few years ago. But it means enabling a person to discover or learn something for themselves. A good example of that would be typing. You can tell someone how to sit, and you can tell someone how to have their posture and where to put their hands and everything. But until the student engages in the act of typing, they're not really going to learn it. And so that is, anything physical like that is essentially heuristic. But you need to think in academic topics, how are you going to turn your assignments into something where students can learn by doing. And some examples are guided notes and prompts for readings or videos, closed activities, reflections, multi-step problems, where you have to do part A to get to part B and that sort of thing. The same thing for reverse engineering type of problems, like if you gave them the answer, and you gave them the equation, and they have to figure out the parts in between. Those are good examples of heuristic assignments. Task sheets, which are worksheets that require students to actually do something rather than just looking up some answers and filling them in. And also, don't throw out your Quizlet kind of stuff where you can do note cards and other things, because there is a lot of value in students being able to recall rote information quickly. You don't want them to lose sight of that. So those are all good things. So non-examples I would give you are things like definitions, where you're like, define these 15 words. Well, you're just basically asking somebody to just copy and paste a bunch of stuff. Rote knowledge is great until you're asking students to just deliver it. They need to be doing something with it. Same goes for short answer questions. And of course, you don't want assignments that require teacher feedback before continuing, because you're going to mess up the learning cycle. You should be designing in a 5-day sort of learning module. You should not be designing in 1 or 2 day bursts, and then they've got to sit around and wait on you to grade and give feedback. You'll put yourself in a precarious position as an online instructor. Assessments are most like the part that we have in the traditional face-to-face classroom. You have basically 2 different types. You've got formative and summative, and the formative need to be the same thing. Just a quick check for understanding that informs both the student and the teacher where the student is. And the student needs to understand, because there is an independent learning situation going on here. The student needs to know if she's on track, and also the teacher needs to know if her students are on track. Summative assessments are the same thing, except I'm going to tell you right now, unless you want every student in your class to cheat on it, then don't give multiple choice. And I do believe in the inherent good nature of human beings, but I will tell you, after having done this for a long time, multiple choice lends itself to cheating. You have to be able to assign something that is cheat proof. And those are writings, essays, projects, different things, maybe labs, students' video, different things like that, where students just literally cannot cheat on it. Those are your best assessments. And if we're going even further, projects, exhibitions, performances, and that sort of thing are your best assessments. And I'm going the wrong way. Feedback on those assessments is where fine tuning happens in the learning process in an online course. For feedback, I would definitely encourage you to be direct, honest, and helpful, and to eliminate "good job" from your feedback. There is nothing more soul crushing than if you put a lot of time into something and your professor or instructor or teacher tells you "good job" and nothing else. You really need to give specific feedback for corrective feedback, and also for positive feedback or reinforcement. It needs to be very specific. And follow what it says in the team rubric. If you're from Tennessee, oral and written feedback is consistently academically focused, frequent, high quality, and references expectations. If you're just now moving your class online, have never taught online before, and your students have never taken an online class, referencing those expectations is really important, because people are not going to view it as quote unquote the same or equal with their face-to-face class, even though it should be. And if you don't have high expectations, and the moment that you accept mediocre work, then that's basically what you're going to get. Discussion and collaboration are important, extremely important, and they're a really kind of I hate to use the word game changer, but they're what really set online learning apart in a way. Discussion prompts are typically open-ended questions about the content, but I always like them when there is something personal about them. Even going so far as saying that I would not only not shy away from controversy, I would run straight towards it. Controversial topics make for the best discussions online. And if you get on social media, you see that that's what basically the entire human race does most of the time. So the good thing is we realize that social media is probably not going away anytime soon. We can definitely see the effect that social media has on society. So we should definitely, from a moral standpoint, be teaching our students how to argue and debate online without being nasty, without being, closed-minded, to be able to get them to use scholarly sources or reputable sources to back up their argument. And somebody gave me a really good example of this. They said they were in divinity school and discussing different translations of the Bible, and they had to say which one they used and why. And that was a very heated discussion. But if you think about it, in order to participate in that discussion in an academic setting, you would have to do a lot of research to back up your claims. You would have to use reputable sources. You couldn't use ilovethekingJamesBible.com. You would have to go to something a little bit more scholarly to get your claim backed up. And that's what we ought to be doing in an academic setting if we want to generate better humans for this earth. There are also, if your subject does not lend itself to that kind of argumentation and debate, you can use these for collaborations. One of the best collaborations I've ever seen, a math teacher teaching exponents, I believe, had his students, he said, you have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. You have to tell me how many times to fold this sheet of paper to reach the moon. And he didn't allow any student to see what another had posted, and so they had to make their own post. And 25 students, you had 25 wrong answers. Well, 527 comments later, the kids finally worked together and got the answer to the question. So it was a really good exercise. for the students. They were really into it. I don't know if they did any other work that week because they were really working hard on this, but it was a great opportunity for them to work together and bounce ideas off each other and rely on each other to learn a concept or to use a concept that they were learning in math. So that's basically the elements of an online course. I'm doing a different video on how to set up a course in Microsoft Teams, but I just thought I would show you this to just teach you what the elements of an online course need to be. Of course, my model is an asynchronous learning model, meaning that you don't have anything that happens in real time. You design it, you set it up, and you let it go, and then you help students and you give them feedback. So if you have any questions, please let me know.